All episodes of A Trial by Podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only. Much to their parents' dismay, neither host is a lawyer, journalist, or investigator. Just two people with microphones and Wi-Fi. All actions discussed are alleged, and all parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. For the full legal mumbo-jumbo, check the show notes.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. Everyone is telling her she dreamt it, but in The Woman in Cabin 10, Lo Blacklock is determined to uncover the truth. In the gripping new thriller coming to Netflix October 10th, Keira Knightley plays a journalist aboard a luxury yacht who witnesses a crime she can't unsee. Adapted from Ruth Ware's best-selling novel, directed by Simon Stone. Watch The Woman in Cabin 10 now, only on Netflix.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana makes car selling fast and easy from start to finish. Enter your license plate or VIN and get a real offer in seconds, down to the penny. If you accept, Carvana will come pick up your car from your driveway. Or you can drop it off at one of our car vending machines. Either way, you get paid instantly. It's fast, transparent, and 100% online. Car selling that saves your time. That's Carvana.
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.
This is a real good story about Bronx and his dad, Ryan, real United Airlines customers.
We were returning home, and one of the flight attendants asked Bronx if he wanted to see the flight deck and meet Captain Andrew.
I got to sit in the driver's seat.
I grew up in an aviation family, and seeing Bronx kind of reminded me of myself when I was that age.
That's Andrew, a real United pilot.
These small interactions can shape a kid's future.
It felt like I was the captain.
Allowing my son to see the flight deck will stick with us forever.
That's how good leads the way.
I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Emily.
And this is A Trial by Podcast. So, we have a very special episode for you guys today that I'm very excited about. But before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about Thursday's bonus episode. You're getting a bonus episode in 2 days, and it is an interview with Julia Cowley from the podcast called The Consult, Real FBI Profilers. And it is called that because Julia Cowley is a former FBI profiler from the Behavioral Analysis Unit. So I got to interview her, and specifically, we talk about Amanda Knox, her behavior, some of her statements, things like that. And it was fucking awesome. Excuse my French. I grew up on the show Criminal Minds, which is about criminal profilers from the FBI's BAU. And yeah, so it was super cool. She had so many interesting things to say about Amanda Knox. She did like a statement analysis of Amanda's recantation after her confession. And I really think you guys are going to enjoy it. And I think that you will love her podcast. So make sure to check out that bonus episode Thursday. This is probably like the coolest thing to me that I've gotten to do for the podcast so far. So I'm really proud of it. And I really think you guys are going to enjoy it. That being said, Emily's giving me a big old yawn right now.
I'm running out of fumes.
We've had a busy couple of months. We just got back from Paris last weekend.
Sure did.
And we're recording this about 2 days before it comes out because we're behind, as always. What's new? But that is actually why I chose today's case. It's spooky season. Halloween is coming. And today's case kind of has it all. And it takes place in France. So we're kicking off the Halloween season with this story that has kings, mistresses, sex, scandal, witchcraft, poison, potions, spells, demons, Satanism, and human sacrifice, all of which took place under the absolute monarchy of King Louis XIV of France. Now, King Louis XIV is the one who commissioned the building of Versailles, and Emily and I got to go to Versailles while we were in France.
Sure did.
And it was awesome. So we're excited to talk about it, dive into the history of it, and it's a great story for you guys. But before we get there, I wanted to tell you While we were in Paris, as someone who is like weirdly fascinated with death, I had to visit the catacombs while we were there. And Emily refused to go with me, which I kind of teased her about, being a baby about it. But once I was there and I was 65 feet beneath the ground, walking through dark tunnels completely alone, I was like, you know what? Emily was right.
Yeah, I was onto something,
You were onto something. I can admit when I'm wrong.
If you don't want to hear about the history of the catacombs, you can skip to the main story, which starts around the 12-minute mark.
If you've never seen As Above, So Below, then that's why you wanted to go down there.
Yes, I still haven't seen it, so we have to schedule a movie night with our friends. It's like perfect season to watch that movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, I haven't seen it. I'm glad I didn't see it before going because I thought I was going to be walking through tunnels with a billion other people, like a museum, like Versailles is like, you can't even, all of your pictures, there's 50 people in them. Mm-hmm. And that's what I expected. But you walk down 130 spiral stairs. I think it's 130 spiral staircase. You're like dizzy when you get to the bottom. I get to the bottom, not a person in sight. I walked through these dark tunnels for like 8 to 10 minutes alone, underground. The tunnels are really small, and I'm like, what if they collapse on me? Almost had a little panic attack, but I didn't, so very proud of myself. But eventually, I found other people before I got to where all of the bones are, and thank God, because I think I would have fucking freaked out if I was alone down there with all of the like remains. So I pretty much just like followed them around like a little puppy dog the entire time, even though they didn't speak English, so I didn't speak to them at all. But for those of you who don't know, the catacombs are basically an underground tunnel system beneath Paris that hold the remains of over 6 million people. Okay? Some crazy, crazy shit. And they were created in the late 18th century as a desperate solution to a public health crisis. So by the 1780s, Paris's cemeteries were overflowing. There were a lot of people dying of like, I don't know exactly
Plague.
What diseases, but yeah, like that kind of stuff that you the fevers. There are a lot of fevers going around. And so there are a lot of people dying, and they didn't have like a good burial system in the city. So there were corpses like leaking into basements is how it was described.
Wasn't the botch pretty popular back then too?
The what?
The botulism?
I'm sure. Yeah. The botch, I like that. Botch, a little bit of plug.
Little botch.
Little botch, little plug. But yeah, disease was spreading, and there was just like, it was becoming, there were too many dead bodies in Paris. Like they're like not staying buried. There's a stench that is surrounding the city. And the government's answer to this was kind of horrifying, but kind of ingenious. And the answer was to move the dead underground. There were also a lot of mass graves outside of the city from some of these diseases where, tons of people are dying at once. And these mass graves were like, they're just tossing bodies in, like piling them up. It's not the way that you would want to be buried.
Yeah.
And so they started just digging up these graves, digging up these cemeteries, digging up these mass graves, and they would transport the bodies by night in covered wagons. And the first transfers came from the Cemetery of the Innocents, which is just kind of like a spooky name for a cemetery.
Yeah.
And that cemetery had actually been used for nearly 600 years before it was condemned. So the remains were placed in the city's abandoned limestone quarries, it was like already a tunnel system because they're harvesting this limestone to take out. And some of this limestone was used to build landmarks like the Louvre and Notre Dame. So we got to see some of that limestone.
That's pretty cool.
Over time, the catacombs grew into a sprawling necropolis, holding the bones of, like I said, more than 6 million people. Because once they had moved a lot of these bodies down there, then they started like putting bodies there immediately. Like they weren't just moving them from cemeteries and stuff. I believe they were waiting till they were skeletonized, or they were skeletonizing them somehow. I don't know, but they're all skeletons down there. It's not like,
it's all just bones.
Yes, it's all just bones. But here's the crazy thing is, what I got to tour and like what is open to the public is, it's kind of like a museum. There's 1.1 miles of tunnels that you can walk through. And trust me, that felt endless. I was like halfway through, I was like, I'm ready. I'm going to move it or lose it out of here. Like
I'm ready to go home.
Yeah, it was spooky. And like, I was less bothered by the bones than I was by like knowing how deep I was underground, because it's underneath the subway system, it's underneath the water system, it's underneath the sewage system. Like,
could you hear the subway down there?
No, I didn't. Okay. But it's so deep, and I was just having that thought of like, what if this collapses and I'm like stuck down here with 6 million bodies and no food. Ooh. But anyway, so 1.1 miles, you're like, holy shit, that's a long ass tunnel underground. Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing: the catacombs in total span 186 miles of tunnels.
Yeah, that's fucking crazy.
186 miles of tunnels is insane. But there's people that explore the other restricted areas of the tunnels, which we'll get to. But it's really interesting because it remains like a steady 57 degrees Fahrenheit or 14 degrees Celsius year round. So it's like cold and, sorry, trigger warning for the word I'm about to use. It's very moist down there, like the ceiling's dripping, and it's spooky for sure. Mm-hmm. Now, the bones are stacked into these like eerie decorative patterns, forming walls of skulls and femurs, which are known as ossuaries decoratifs. And like the first one I saw when you go in, because the femurs make up the walls and they're just kind of like, they're sitting perpendicular to the wall. So you just see the end of the bones and they're stacked up like that, almost like logs. But then they place the skulls strategically to make patterns. And like the first one, when you walk in on the left, is like a big heart. And if you guys follow us on Instagram or Facebook at A Trial by Podcast, I posted a video today. So it's already out when this episode comes out, of me going through the catacombs and everything, so you can see, because I found it really interesting and I think you guys will too. But some of them are just like patterns, like stripes, like an archway, hearts. It's just funky. And I was like, oh, hearts is like an interesting choice. Like I'm just picturing them in like 1800s. Like, what should we do, guys?
Think a pattern at all is an interesting choice with bones. That's weird.
Yeah, it's like, you know, they're forming a display.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about the catacombs is death has not stopped the living from venturing down there. So in the 19th century, secret concerts and parties were held among the bones, blending life and death together. In 1897, police uncovered a clandestine theater hidden deep underground, complete with a bar and a projection room. Like, people are just throwing underground parties in the catacombs.
That's crazy.
I want an invite. Like, how do you get invited?
It's like Great Gatsby, 60 feet deep.
Yeah, like 65 feet deep is... Yeah, that's crazy. Now, like I said, only a small portion is open to the public, and the rest of the tunnels are off limits. It's illegal to go in them. And they're actually, because they're so huge, there's almost 185 miles that you're not allowed to go into. They have their own police unit in Paris called the Cataflix. This unit's job is to only police the catacombs, like its own city.
That's crazy.
Like a city of the dead. It's freaky. Now, those who dare to explore illegally down there are called cataphiles, and their exploits have become urban legend. There are endless stories of people getting lost or dying in the 186 miles of tunnels, and others setting up homes down there amongst the dead. In 2004, police stumbled upon an entire underground cinema equipped with lights, seating, and a bar, and no one ever came forward to claim it. But again, like, I want an invitation. I saw in the museum, they have a photo of an invitation from the early 1900s or late 1800s to a band party. It was a band with a saxophone and a tuba. Can you imagine? It's 1902. You're going to party in the catacombs with a 10-piece band with horns. Like,
that's crazy.
Yeah. I just picture only coupes. They're only drinking out of coupes, like nothing else. So fancy. Now, some of the tunnels, what?
We said it at the same time.
Oh, did we? I didn't even catch it. So some of the tunnels even have street signs and plaques to guide explorers. So like you can see what street you're underneath in Paris. But a lot of these pathways remain uncharted. Like they don't really know where they go. They're not mapped, which is why there's all these stories of people getting lost down there. There are, of course, whispers of ghosts, of rituals, and like cults meeting down there.
I mean, there can't not be ghosts down there. It's a bunch of dead people.
I don't know. I didn't get any crazy vibes, but we kind of talked about this. Like, I don't have that gene of like,
oh, I do.
I've never
had a vibe
had
indicator, and I didn't even have to go down there to know that it was going to be not great.
Yeah, I've never had like a ghost experience, and like I don't know. It was spooky for sure, but like I didn't have any contact with the other realm. I'll put it that way. I definitely didn't get that. It was just spooky because of like. Yeah. But beyond the macabre charm of the catacombs, the tunnels have played crucial historical as well. During World War II, both the French resistance and Nazi forces used them as hideouts and command centers, and they would use them to sneak around the city, which is freaky. Imagine being by yourself down there on a mission, sneaking around. There are lights in the tunnels where the museum part is. I'm sure the other tunnels don't have lights in them. I can't imagine that they would. Now, today, the catacombs attract around 550,000 visitors each year and are recognized as a UNESCO tentative World Heritage Site. And when we went to Versailles, I heard one of the tour guides telling their group that Versailles gets 8 million visitors per year. And Versailles is like out of the city.
It's like about
45 minutes or an hour to get there. So it's like a whole thing to go to Versailles. Like catacombs are right in the city in the Latin Quarter, like easier to get to, and you're only seeing like a small portion of the same amount of visitors. You know what I mean?
That's crazy.
Which just shows you like There's a lot of people who are not into this type of thing. Scientists even study the catacombs because it has its own unique ecosystem within, and they've uncovered rare bacteria and fungi that they haven't discovered anywhere else on Earth in the catacombs.
Yeah,
which
I don't like that.
Cuckoo. Cuckoo. But yeah, so sorry to like start with a mini story, but I just felt like I've listened to true crime podcasts cover the catacombs in an episode, and it's like, to me, it's not interesting enough for a full episode, but it was interesting enough that I wanted to give you guys like a little tidbit. But yeah, so with that being said, let's get into the affair of the poisons. Because that is what we are talking about today. So in the late 1670s, beneath the gilded splendor of King Louis XIV's court, a horrific scandal unfolded. It was a world of poisons and witchcraft lurking in the shadows of Versailles, a hidden criminal underworld where nobles and commoners alike dabbled in the dark arts. Historians call this episode the Affair of the Poisons, known in French as l'affaire des poisons. Poisons. There's a lot of French. There's going to be a lot of bad French in this episode. Accept it or move on, guys. Between 1677 and 1682, hundreds of people were implicated in a conspiracy of murder and sorcery. Secret tribunals issued 319 arrest warrants, and 36 men and women at least were executed for poisoning, witchcraft, or both. Even members of the highest nobility fell under suspicion. The Sun King's own official mistress, Madame de Montespan, stood accused of sins as shocking as black magic and infanticide. This story, like I said, it has it all. There's crime, there's scandal, there's dark magic, there's murder, there's witchcraft, there's sex, there's affairs, there's Satanism, and there's King Louis XIV's bitch ass. Because this guy
got it all.
We got it all. And King Louis XIV tries to cover this all up. Evidently, we're talking about it now, so it didn't really work, but he did his damnedest to cover this up.
Scandal.
So I want to give you guys background on what is going on in France at the time, what's going on in Paris, what's going on with Louis XIV's reign, because the cultural context of Paris, of France at the time, is really important to how and why this entire story played out. So I know you're going to be like, there's a lot of historical background, but I promise, like, you need the background to understand the why behind how all of this happened. So before Louis XIV's reign, France was emerging from a century of turmoil and decentralization. The 1500s were dominated by the wars of religion between the Catholics and the Protestants, which fractured the kingdom and weakened royal authority. So royal authority had begun to spread to like a system of checks and balances. There was religious authority that had, actual political power at the time. And King Henry IV brought temporary peace with the Edict of Nantes. And that was in 1598. And this granted limited religious tolerance, but his assassination in 1610 reignited instability. His successor, which was Louis VIII, and his chief minister, Cardinal Richelieu, began rebuilding royal power through absolutism. So this is when things kind of start to shift away from like this checks and balances system that they had for a little bit. And this absolutism curbed the independence of nobles, of other people that previously had political power. It strengthened the monarchy and it basically centralized administration. And under absolutism, the king was not merely a ruler, but he was the embodiment of the state itself. Now, Louis XIV really took this to another level. And he has this famous phrase that I'm not going to try to pronounce in French, but it basically was, I am the state. And this summed up his ideology because basically in practice it meant that the king not only made the laws, but he levied the taxes, he commanded the military, and he administered justice. So, think about the US today. We have separate branches of government for all of these things, but this is all going to one person, not just one piece of the government. It's going to one person. And nobles lost political power. So people who previously had a little bit of a say, like were pieces of a puzzle, no longer had a say. And they basically were just serving as decorative courtiers at Versailles. Now, religion was also important to politics, but religion didn't have its own political authority anymore. However, it reinforced the monarchy's authority, as the church taught that obedience to the monarch was the same as obedience to God, because the king was supposed to be like appointed by God, basically. Censorship and surveillance ensured that dissent or criticism was stifled. So it was like, you are not allowed to criticize the king. You're not allowed to criticize the monarchy. But when Louis XIV inherited the throne as a child, France was again thrown into chaos during the Fronde, which went from 1648 to 1653. So I think Louis XIV was like 4 or 5 when he inherited the throne. So his mom had to serve as the regent. And the Fronde was a series of uprisings by nobles, judges, and commoners against the royal authority. Because when you have a regent serving, especially a woman, it's like the monarchy is kind of weak. It's like, if you're going to try and take down the monarchy, that's the time.
Hi, it's Eva Longoria. And let's be real. After 40, we should ask for more from our skincare. I swear by Revitalift Triple Power Moisturizer by L'Oreal Paris. With vitamin C, pro-retinol, and hyaluronic acid, it reduces my wrinkles, firms, and brightens. And it's not a procedure. It's just a hardworking moisturizer.
Revitalift Triple Power Moisturizer by L'Oreal Paris. Grab it today in fragrance-free or with SPF 30. Available at your local Walmart.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength, Halliday! Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner, by knockout, is Halliday! Halliday, bring it on!
Once upon a mundane morning, Barb's day got busy without warning. A realtor in need of an open house sign. No, 50 of them, and designed before 9.
My head hurts.
Any mighty tools to help with this plight? Aha! Barb made her move. She opened Canva and got in the groove.
Bulk creating Canva sheets. Create 50 signs fit for suburban streets.
Done in a click, all complete.
Sweet!
Now, imagine what your dreams can become when you put imagination to work at canva.com.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I don't know if you've heard, but Mint's premium wireless is $15 a month. But I'd like to offer one other perk. We have no stores. That means no small talk. Crazy weather we're having. No, it's not. It's just weather. It is an introvert's dream. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
So young Louis witnessed a lot of like mobs invading Paris, and he and his family were forced to flee the city. And this was an experience that stuck with him deeply. It left him distrustful of the nobility. It left him distrustful of the people. It left him distrustful of even like religious figures as well. And this is actually what eventually leads to the building of Versailles. So where Versailles was actually his father's, that plot of land was like his father's hunting lodge. That's why Versailles is out of the city, is because they had to flee Paris. And so when Louis came into power, he wanted to be out of the city. Like, he didn't want to be amongst all of the people. Mm-hmm. It was like one of those things where he didn't feel safe there. So he commissioned the building of Versailles. So by the time this is all happening, it's the 1670s, and France had stabilized a bit. Louis is now of age and presiding over the court. And this is a jewel-dripping royal court at Versailles. Louis XIV was known as the Sun King, and much like the failed rapper with a heart of gold from your local high school, he gave himself this nickname. In fact, he consciously crafted his own image around the sun as a symbol of absolute power, of stability, and of divine authority. And it really just represented his belief in the divine right of kings, the idea that his authority came directly from God. And just as the sun gives life and light, Louis portrayed himself as the source of order, glory, and prosperity for France. The image also tied into his control of art, architecture, and ceremony at Versailles. Everything, from the Hall of Mirrors to the rigid daily routines of courtiers, was designed to reinforce that all that power radiated outward from the king. So the layout of Versailles, this is all meant to radiate around Louis. And the Hall of Mirrors, Emily and I learned while we were there, we got to go into all of the apartments in Versailles. So the king has his own apartments, like he's got his bedroom and a couple of rooms. And then there's this massive hall, the Hall of Mirrors. And hall, the word hall doesn't aptly describe what this is.
It's massive.
It's massive. And it's just like dripping in gold. It's like the most amazing art and like ceiling and paintings and all of these things. And on the other side of that, so on one side it's Louis's bedroom or the king's bedroom, because obviously other kings lived here. Then this massive hall, and then on the other side it's the queen's bedroom and apartments. And it is, the bedrooms and everything were so cool to go inside of. I love the queen's really bedroom, cool. But I'll post some videos and stuff probably with this audio clip to it of, you know, what we got to see and of the Hall of Mirrors and everything. But like when me and Emily were there, we were like, can you imagine doing this walk of like after you've been called to the king's quarters as queen and you're like walking back to your own room?
Yeah, like your walk of shame down the hallway of mirrors.
This 80-year-old man just called you to his chambers. You're like 18. You're like, oh, fuck. And then you got to do this walk through this gold major, like massive hall. And just you're just looking at yourself the whole time. That's tough.
Right.
That's tough. But at least it's a beautiful hall.
Yeah.
That is for sure. Now, the other thing is like when we say he's the Sun King, this was the thing that we saw the most at Versailles. Everything has like this symbol of, it's like Louis's face in the middle of a sun. And it's actually like a dope ass symbol. Like,
yeah, it does look actually really cool.
Props to that graphic designer who did that back in the 1600s because it's fucking sick. And like you'll see it on the gates, like in gold, all of this stuff, it's everywhere. And it's pretty cool. So we'll post some stuff about that too. Now, on the surface, as you can tell, this is a very glamorous court. This is a very glamorous atmosphere. And it seemed like an era of opulence and refinement. There were courtiers and silks and jewels. There were lavish balls and masquerades. And the Sun King was just basking in the glory of it all. But behind the gilded facade, because there's always a facade, vice and desperation thrived. So Louis XIV spent nearly a third of France's annual budget on the court and on his wars. And this nobility represented, again, only a fraction of society. Most of France's 20 million people were peasants, and many were living in poverty and famine. They were hungry, they didn't have enough to eat, they didn't have enough money to get by, and taxes were high and unfair. Nobles and clergy were largely exempt, so the burden fell on the poor. The king's insistence on grandeur kept the state perpetually in debt, while peasants starved during harsh winters and bad harvests. So Louis XIV deliberately turned Versailles into a theater of power by luring the aristocracy to court, because previously court didn't all live with the king like this, I think. That's my understanding. I'm not a French history expert. But now everybody's living in Versailles. There were about 10,000 people that lived in Versailles between the court and the people who worked on Versailles. Now, I don't know if what they're referring to as Versailles with that statistic is what we saw gated off. Like it might have been bigger, like it might have included some of the town around it, I would assume, like that the workers and everything didn't live like literally in there, because it didn't seem big enough for 10,000 people to be living there, but that's what I read. So I imagine it had to have more of the land around it included in that. But they lured this aristocracy to court. They give them lavish apartments. They're gambling all day and all night. They're throwing these crazy parties, these balls, these masquerades. And by doing this, he took away a lot of their political power, but he's like, but look at all these nice things you get to have now. And he effectively neutralized them as political threats. He's like, if you want to have all of these nice things, you have to do as I say, basically. And they spent fortunes on clothing and gifts, trying to maintain status. Like this is all a very like, it's giving like Regina George. Like it's a hierarchy, like it's very cliquey of like, you have to be the best dressed, you have to gamble the most, you have to like look the best at the balls in order to maintain your status.
Or you can't sit with us.
Yeah, or you can't fucking sit with us. And so they're like spending all their money, like spending fortunes on clothing and gifts, trying to maintain this status. And they're just like constantly fighting for Louis's favor. They're trying to get in his good graces and move up the food chain of this social hierarchy. Behind the scenes, though, this lifestyle, even though they live in a palace and have all these nice things, this lifestyle led to a lot of envy, a lot of jealousy, a lot of rivalry, a lot of backstabbing, a lot of moral corruption. There were like tons of affairs, duels, and whispered plots were constant. Many nobles were actually bankrupt. They ended up selling their land or titles because now they were living at Versailles and they couldn't afford what they needed to keep up with the status quo of the court. So they're selling their land, selling their titles just to get another fancy, fluffy hair wig or another gown to attend all of these balls. Now, under absolutism, every favor, a job, a marriage, even royal attention depended on King Louis's whim. There were no elections, there were no parliaments with power, no checks, no balances. For courtiers, one misstep could mean total ruin. Like, you piss Louis off, you're done.
You're out of here.
You're done. You're out of here. And this atmosphere of fear and competition made people turn to desperate, violent, and deadly measures, which is what our story is about today. So contemporary observers noted that Louis's court, though outwardly devout, because Louis attended Catholic Mass daily, and the whole court was, supposed to be Catholic. They're supposed to be very devout. In practice was, quote, the most libertine in Europe, end quote. Even described by one Spanish noble as, quote, a real brothel, end quote.
Yikes.
Now, I'll be honest, I did have to Google what the word libertine meant. I had never heard that before. So if anyone else didn't know, the definition is as follows. A person, especially a man, who behaves without moral principles or a sense of responsibility, especially in sexual matters.
So basically a glorified man whore.
Yes. Everyone's fucking each other in this court. That's what I'm trying to get at here. Everyone's sleeping with each other. The king, he had a whole horde of women that were his official mistresses. And these were sought after positions in court. If you were the king's head mistress, if you were his bottom bitch, you were important, you had power, you had probably a lot more power than some of these other nobles at court. And this was respected. It wasn't something that was hidden. It was this is your official position in the court is head bitch. You're head bitch at court.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So immorality and sexual intrigue are running rampant throughout this fucking place. And this is encouraged. Gambling is encouraged. Affairs, all of this is encouraged. It's eyes wide shut type shit. That's how I'm picturing all of this. And amid this high pressure, high society life, getting freaky wasn't the court's only vice. It wasn't the only thing that they turned to distract them from life. In fact, a taste for the occult began to spread quicker than the clap. The nobility at Versailles were trapped in a gilded cage. They were bound by etiquette, by surveillance. They're always being watched. There's endless competition for the king's favor, and everyone's trying to tattletale on each other to jump over that person, basically. And beneath all of this, these courtiers, they were anxious, they were bored, and most importantly, they were powerless. Every decision that mattered, political, financial, even romantic, it all came from one man, Louis XIV. They do not have any control. Not only have they lost their political power, but they've lost power over their own lives to make decisions about their own lives. So they turned to the only realm where they could still feel some control, the supernatural. The occult offered both escape and agency. Astrology and magic promised what politics could not: secret knowledge, personal power, and influence over one's own destiny. And to me, I think that is the key point here of understanding why this all happens and how it happens, is people didn't have control over their own destiny, over their own lives, who they were going to marry, what they were going to do at court. If they it wasn't a question of, oh, do you want to keep up with the status quo, or do you want to just fuck off and go live on that wasn't a choice here.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where a fortune teller could give a noblewoman what no priest or no king could. She got to see a glimpse of what her future would be like. An alchemist could promise a courtier the means to secure wealth or love without waiting for royal favor. So it's well, if you want to have a good match and get married, someone has to set that up. Mm-hmm. But if you buy a love potion and force it, you're going to increase your odds of at least making some romantic match, even if it's not a marriage. So for a class obsessed with appearances but stripped of any real power, magic became this intoxicating substitute for control. At the same time, the 17th century was an era when science, religion, and superstition overlapped freely. The lines between alchemy and chemistry were blurred. The lines between medicine and magic were blurred. For example, if you're sick and someone's here, take this potion, and it makes you feel better, is that medicine or is it magic? It's you don't know what's the difference. At the time, when you can't understand how these things are doing what they're doing, what's the difference? Now, the church condemned witchcraft, but its rituals and magic reinforced the idea that unseen forces controlled the world. And so people had this idea of well, why stop at just religion? Why stop at just worship when we can use these unseen forces to get what we want out of life? Now, the court's fascination also had a sexual and emotional charge to it. Its fascination with the occult in particular. These were people often forbidden from expressing their true desires or their frustrations openly. So magic offered a socially taboo outlet for lust, jealousy, and rage. Love potions and fertility charms were all the rage, as was poison. And we're going to get to poison. And if you guys listen to our Aqua Tofana episode, you're going to hear a lot of similarities because poison and the Aqua Tofana period was kind of, it happened in Italy first, and then a lot of that ideology spread, and it happens in France after. Like when I was researching this case, they talked a lot about how poison was seen as like a foreign thing. It wasn't seen as French, but at this time, this is when it's starting to slowly spread to France. And when poison began to circulate through the salons of Paris, it wasn't seen as a criminal innovation. It was simply the next logical step in the pipeline of magic, you might say. So the same people who were seeking horoscopes and love spells soon sought things called inheritance powders, which poisons. Mm-hmm. And basically an inheritance powder is a poison that like you give to someone that when you want to inherit something from them, you know? So you can dose someone with a love potion and they later fall in love with you, but you didn't really force it upon them. It's like magic. Oh, I gave them a love potion and now later they're going to fall in love with me. And so like that's one thought process. And if you truly believe that, the next step is like, okay, well now you can buy a poison and you can dose someone with it. And if they die later, it's like you didn't really kill them. It's like the magic gave you what you wanted because they don't really understand. Like a poison is just like a potion basically. And they don't see it as like a weapon in the same way that they would see like stabbing somebody. That's not how it was thought of at the time. It was like, well, this magic is my life will be better, easier, whatever, if this person dies. And I'm not killing them. It's the magic killing them, basically. I don't know. Like they didn't see it as like murder.
It's like whatever happens is not on me.
Yeah, yeah. Now, poison was just kind of seen as this quick, easy way to solve problems. The poisons were poorly misunderstood and almost impossible to detect post-mortem. Tales from Italy, dating back to Catherine de' Medici's time, hinted at secret poisons that could kill without trace. Even, it was whispered, a toxin that could be applied to a pair of gloves. I don't know if this is true or not, but like it's like, oh, you put it inside the gloves, and then when they put the gloves on, it seeps through their skin and they die. But I don't know what that would be. Now, importantly, belief in witchcraft and magic was widespread across all classes, not just the nobility. So we're going to talk a lot about the nobility here, but this is going on everywhere, all over France. In this deeply religious society, many people also believed in the power of curses, of spells, and demonic intervention. So witchcraft and sacrilege were feared as real threats. They were seen as evil. And that's where it's like this all gets so convoluted is what's the difference between the occult using magic and witchcraft, because they all are on the same spectrum, but it's like there's a point where it's seen as evil and there's a point where it's seen as like divine, using magic to like love potions, things like that. And it's within this cultural mindset that our story takes place today. So the affair of the poisons began, ironically, with what looked like a classic high society murder mystery. And at the center of it all was a Parisian noblewoman named Marie-Madeleine Marguerite de Bray Marquise de Brinvilliers.
What a name.
What a name. So we're going to call her Mads, short for Madame de Brinvilliers, because it's jazzy. And she needs a jazzy name because she's about to become France's most scandalous murderer.
The jazziest.
Yeah. Now, Mads was born into privilege. She was the daughter of Antoine d'Aubray, a respected Parisian nobleman and a civil officer. Now, Mads was intelligent, she was charming, and by all accounts, she was extremely beautiful. But behind the polished facade, like I said, there's always a facade that she's presenting to the world. She was kind of just like a hot mess in a corset. And like most noblewomen of her era, she didn't get to marry for love, okay? She married for logistics. Mm-hmm. And she was paired off with a man who had the same name as her father, Antoine. But This is Antoine Gobelin. And he was the Marquis de Brinvilliers. And this was considered a favorable match. This was going to be good for her family. It was going to help them secure their place in the aristocracy. And it was just designed, it was a match designed for her family status, not for love, not for her happiness. And the pomp and circumstance of her position in the aristocracy may have looked glamorous from the outside, but inside, Mads was miserable. And it's like reading about stuff like this and doing some of these historical stories makes me feel really lucky to be alive when and where I am alive, because we don't have to fuck with the pomp and circumstance unless we want to. Like, we get to fuck with the pomp if we want to, but we don't have the circumstance forcing us to do the pomp. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're all pomp, no circumstance. And we're lucky because even today, there are a lot of women who do not get to choose their partners and get horrific partners.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. We could all use more time. Amazon Business offers smart business buying solutions, so you can spend more time growing your business and less time doing the admin. I can see why they call it smart. Learn more at amazonbusiness.com.
You don't technically need this car. You say that out loud to yourself. You say, I have no space. You say, I'm just looking. Then you click. Then you zoom in on photo number 87 and whisper, oh no. Then you text a friend, the one who always enables you. You say to yourself, this is the last one, knowing it is not. You don't need this car. But maybe, just maybe, this car needs you. Bring a trailer. It's never just a car.
So, for Mads, this marriage offered none of the romance that the poets had promised her whole life. The Marquise was a gambler, a womanizer, and generally just overall kind of an embarrassment. And we all know that guy. He just pretty much left her lonely, humiliated, and trapped in this life that she did not want. And as her husband gambled away her family's fortune, not just his own fortune, and just paraded around all of his mistresses, Mads was just left up to pick up the pieces, trying to save them from going bankrupt and losing everything that they had. Then came Godin de Saint Croix.
These are some names.
I know,
man.
it's tough. I'm really having a hard time. And that's why we're going to call him Godi, because I already said it wrong once. It's actually Godin. But it's spelled with an I. That's what I don't understand the pronunciations here. We're going to call him Godi because that's way easier. And frankly, it sounds like the kind of man who ruins your life. Like the male version of Belly from The Summer I Turned Pretty. Because spoiler, he's going to ruin her life. Now, Godi was charming and handsome. He was an army officer, and she actually met him because he had served with her husband. So that's how Mads and Godi meet, is through her bitch-ass husband. And he was said to be, Godi was said to be the kind of man who walked into the room and made everyone forget what they were saying. He's handsome. He has stature. He walks in. He's like a force of nature. And this introduction, like the first time she meets him, she's like, oh, I'm going to have to break me off a piece of that, basically. And this introduction would not only turn out to be one of the worst decisions in the Brinvilliers family history, but it would also leave an indelible mark on France in its entirety. Like, they change French history for a minute here, this pair. And this pair's instant chemistry was going to go down in history as one of the most passionate and deadly love affairs of the era. And this affair was no secret. Everyone knew about it. Everyone at court knew about it. And if Mads and Godi made any efforts at subtlety, they were definitely futile. While it seemed that Mads' husband was too busy gambling and chasing women to care about this affair, like he had his own mistresses, he didn't give a fuck what she was doing. On the other hand, though, her family was not as forgiving, because her family finds out about this affair. And to them, it was a public humiliation. And as a noble family, it's like, oh, men can have mistresses, but women can't have affairs. Of course, that would be ridiculous.
So rude.
And public image was everything when you were a noble family in Louis's court. Again, remember, everyone's fighting for each other's favor. So her father, Antoine de Bray, decided to step in and find a solution to this problem. So he had Godi arrested and thrown into the Bastille, like prison. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little prison time will fix this situation.
Turn him right around.
Now, this was a mistake on Antoine's part because it was going to cost him his life. Behind bars in prison, Godi met an Italian alchemist and poisoner named Egidio, which this is not a normal Italian name. Egidio Ixili.
Sounds like a alchemist.
Sounds like I believe this guy had magic.
Oh, yeah.
I think everyone
Just
else
from
in
his
the
name.
story is bullshit, but I think this guy had some magic. So Exley was famous for concocting odorless, tasteless poisons that could kill slowly, imitating your run-of-the-mill illness that led to a slow and painful death that everyone got back then. You know, same old slow and painful death. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So in prison, as the story goes, Godey spent his days learning from Exley how to craft these poisons. And by the time he was released, where are they getting all the stuff to make these poisons in prison? I don't know. But by the time that Godey is released, he's not just a free man. He was a fully trained poison artisan. And artisanal... Sometimes I try and write jokes ahead of time, and I just always forget, and I skip over it. But artisanal poisons here. Get your handcrafted artisanal poisons here. That's when I read the word artisanal. I'm like, it just sounds like a craft fair. Like... Which, yeah, like get your fortune told by the palm reader next door. Get your artisanal poisons here.
Yep.
Yeah. This is like the Renaissance
The one-stop
fair.
shop.
So when Godey and Mads reunited, they were more in love than ever, but they were desperate and broke. Godey's military career had been stalled by the whole going to prison thing, and he was drowning in gambling debt. And of course, we know that Mads' husband had wasted most of their fortune gambling as well, which left her dependent on her family's money. So Godey's broke. He's got no way to make money. Her husband's broke. She has to get money from this family, but this family is trying to put Godey in prison. They're over Mads. They're like, you're an embarrassment. We're done with you. And the pair, they wanted freedom from her family, but they also wanted that family's money, and they wanted it fast. So poison became their shortcut. Together, they concocted a deadly white powder, which was likely arsenic. And this is what's known as the inheritance powders that like start spreading all over Europe. Of course, we don't know for sure that it was arsenic, but that's like historians' best guesses, I think. By the early 1670s, Mads was ready to use this inheritance powder. And her first target was her father. Over several months, she slipped him tiny doses until he died an agonizing death in 1666. Then came her two brothers, both poisoned and both dead, ensuring that she would inherit the family's fortune. However, when the two brothers both die, like right around the same time,
like, that's a little sus.
This is a little sus. And they do attempt an autopsy on at least one of the brothers. And they did note that something about his insides weren't right. But they couldn't say, like, they didn't know enough to be able to say, like, oh, he was poisoned.
Yeah.
But she even tried to kill her sister at one point, though that attempt failed. I don't know why or how, but it failed. So the sister did not get murdered. But for years, no one suspected a thing. Now, once both the brothers died, they're starting to be like, that's really convenient that now you got all of the family money and all of them died like pretty close together.
Yeah, in the same amount of weird circumstances.
Now, they were getting away with this. So the father's killed in 1666. But this illusion is shattered in 1672 when Godey suddenly dies, probably after accidentally ingesting one of his own poisons, or maybe from slowly ingesting them over time, like breathing them in.
Damn.
He dies, and the way that he died was similar to the way people die from this poison. So that's what they think happened. Here's the thing. He's in debt. He owes people money. So the creditors come to their home to collect what they need to get their money back. So they're going through all of his belongings, and in his belongings, they find a locked box that was labeled for Mads to open upon his death. And it was like instructions, it's locked, only Mads can open this after I die, which normally would be respected, but not when you owe people a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so they opened this box up, and inside was a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. Letters, confession notes, bottles of poison, letters written by Mads herself detailing the plot of the murders.
Oh, shit.
So I don't want to give advice to criminals, but I would say, like, don't keep that stuff.
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe burn it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe burn it. Once the king's officers read those letters, the scandal blew up. In 1675, Mads was formally accused of murdering her father and brothers. And before she could be arrested, she fled Paris in disguise, starting a 4-year escape tour of Europe. She hid in England, then in the Netherlands, and finally settled in a convent in Liège, Belgium for a bit until a royal agent tracked her down. So in 1676, which is 10 years after she killed her father, she was captured and dragged back to Paris for trial. and her trial was a pure spectacle. Crowds packed the courtroom to gawk at La Belle Poisonneuse. La Belle Poisonneuse. I actually feel like I fucking crushed that.
Yeah, that actually sounds
the
right.
Pronunciation, the way the pronunciation is spelled is HM-PWAH. Poisonneuse. That's how I feel like French sounds to me. Poisonneuse. Which means the beautiful poisoner.
Lovely.
Lovely. Now, Mads denied everything at first, but the evidence was damning. To break her, interrogators used the water cure. The cure is an interesting word to use for this, because what it meant was forcing her to swallow up to 24 pints of water while bound to a rack. Even in her torment, she kept her dark wit. When she saw the massive jugs lined up for her to drink, she reportedly quipped to her officers, quote, "Surely they don't expect someone of my size to drink all that," end quote.
She's got jokes.
Now, eventually she does crack and confess, because we don't know for certain, but she was probably tortured, like, badly.
Yeah.
Now, some of what she confesses to included some very shocking allegations of incest. So we do not know, whether or not this is true. We don't know if this just came from her or if this was suggested to her and she agreed. She's being tortured, so I'm not calling her like a liar about it. We just don't know for sure if she said it or whatever, because it's been 400 years, almost 350 years. So there were some allegations that she had sexual relations with her younger brother and that she suffered, sexual assault as a child from family members. And there was one thing I read that she had engaged in incest over 300 times. However, at the time, you have to remember, she's seen as a poisoner. She's seen as someone who is sacrilege, dabbles in witchcraft, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And, the idea of incest is, seen as inherently evil as well. So I think it's possible that, she really was sexually abused by her family. But it's also possible that this is something that was, it was something that they thought was a logical step in this evil witch woman. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Now, on July 16th, 1676, Mads was beheaded, her body was burned, and her ashes were scattered to the wind. And if you think that this sounds like a harsh punishment, just you wait, because she got off easy. Now, one woman described the scene saying, quote, "Never has Paris seen such crowds so intent on a spectacle," end quote. Because this is all done in public.
That's crazy.
And everyone's just
trauma,
loving it. And I've been seeing videos online of people being like, let's bring back public executions. Let's not, guys.
That's a hard no for me.
Let's not do that. I literally saw two guys on a podcast talking about, well, when we bring back public executions, how old do you think what's the age limit for kids? One of them said 12. And they're like, no, I feel like 12 is too old. I'm not even joking. I'm like, what is going on? Anyway, rumors began spreading that Mads wasn't the only one mixing these inheritance powders. Before her death, she reportedly claimed that she was selling these powders to half of Paris. According to Mads, her clients included nobles, priests, and courtiers who'd bought poison or paid for spells. Suddenly, every mysterious illness or convenient death in the city started to be suspicious, and panic began to spread everywhere, not just to the court, but also to the townspeople. Even King Louis XIV started becoming paranoid. And as the tale goes, by the time his meals passed through all of the food testers, his soup was always cold, which I like that. Now, the Brinvilliers case cracked open a new era of terror in France. This was a new weapon that people, for a long time just wasn't a thing. And now people were so scared of it because it's invisible. How would you know that there's a poison in your food? You don't. It's not something that you can actively be on the lookout for. Yeah. People began whispering about a secret underworld of poisoners, of witches, of Satanists and alchemists thriving in the shadows of Paris. A criminal marketplace where you could buy potions, poisons, or love charms for the right price. And this, at least, was real. You could buy these things in the right place for the right price. Whether or not they did anything is, you guys decide. But within just a few years, those whispers would lead to mass arrest, torture chambers, and public executions that we're going to get into in graphic detail. And with that, with Mads' death, the affair of the poisons had officially begun. By 1677 to 1678, authorities in Paris had begun picking up the scent of this criminal magical underworld, which, by the way, we talked a lot about in Italy during the Aqua Tofana case. And they were determined to cut it out root and stem. The man who would lead the investigation was Gabriel Nicolas de la Reynie, and he was the lieutenant general of the Parisian police. He was appointed by a very paranoid, very afraid Louis XIV, and La Reynie was known as a diligent, incorruptible officer. That's why he was chosen. He was seen as someone who was loyal and didn't matter what you offered him, he was going to do the right thing by the king. And he had previously cleaned up the streets of Paris, literally by improving street lighting, firefighting, and sanitation in the city, which evidently proved that he was completely capable of uncovering the invisible web of sorcerers, poisoners, and murderers. They're like, "Oh, you did good with sanitation. We're gonna, yeah, you got this. We're gonna put you up just about 15 levels." So. Yeah. And again, this is a challenging thing because it's not just one place. It's not just one group of people or one community. This extended from the slums of Paris to the Palace of Versailles. And Paris indeed harbored this thriving underworld of fortune tellers, of wise women and alchemists who offered magical services to all. Historian Lynn Wood Moliner explains that these occult practitioners were called generalists, and basically they dabbled in everything from treating toothaches to locating hidden treasure, which I love. I wish my dentist could help me locate a hidden treasure. And for many Parisians, visiting a local wise woman was as routine as visiting a doctor or a priest. These women, and some men, but mostly women, offered potions, charms, and astrological readings, and sometimes magical solutions to personal problems. For example, if a desperate wife came to a sorceress complaining of an abusive husband, she might start by receiving, like giving them prayers, helping them do some like herbal remedies, a little bit of just, up in the vibes a little bit. Mm-hmm. But if those failed, the sorcerer might suggest a more permanent solution to the husband problem. And in short, if you needed someone gone, the underground market of poison sellers was open for business, and they were able to like market their services by just not saying that they were selling poisons, but like, "Oh, we can help you with those husband problems. Yeah, we're just going to do a little bit of herbal. We're just going to burn some sage and we'll see how that goes. And then we can like look into it." And this, we talked a lot about this in the Aqua Tofana episode, how they kind of like were testing their customers to be like, "All right, how much further you want to go before I offer this to you?" And you freak out, you know? So as La Reynie and his agents began infiltrating this criminal occult network, they made several important arrests early on. One of the first big breakthroughs came with the case of Magdalene de Lagrange, a self-styled fortune teller. Lagrange was arrested for forgery and for poisoning a wealthy lawyer whom she had ensnared in a fake marriage in order to steal his money. And under questioning, she hinted at the existence of a wider conspiracy of poisoners in Paris. La Reynie became convinced that there were more witches operating in the city. And it's really with this investigation that the poisoners they were associated as like practicing witchcraft. Like poison was witchcraft. It was sacrilege. It wasn't just killing someone. It wasn't just a murder. It was something that was like of supernatural power, basically. Not long after, another arrest sent shockwaves. A woman named Marie Beauce, known as La Beauce, was overheard drunkenly boasting at a party that she was growing rich by selling poison to aristocrats who wished to rid themselves of their rivals in court. A horrified guest reported this boast to the authorities anonymously by dropping a note in a collection box at a church, and La Beauce was promptly arrested, and she was soon condemned to be burned alive at the stake for her crimes.
Damn.
Burned alive. Tied to a pole and burned alive. So that's why I said getting your head chopped off, better option than being burned alive.
Yeah. Ned Stark edition? Okay.
Ned Stark edition. Spoiler.
Sorry.
I'm just kidding. If you guys haven't watched Game of Thrones by now, what are you doing?
Yeah,
watch
literally.
it. You have to dedicate yourself to the first season. It's worth it. So these arrests confirmed that this poison ring that everyone was so afraid of, it existed. Like now their fears are confirmed. And under a lot of pressure, the captured fortune tellers and their associates began to talk. And I guess I shouldn't even say pressure. They get tortured. We're going to talk about the torture shortly. But They start talking. They start pointing fingers in all directions, implicating dozens of accomplices and clients. And in 1679, King Louis XIV created a special high commission to rigorously prosecute this burgeoning scandal. A tribunal was established in April 1679 at the Arsenal in Paris, officially called the Chambre Ardente, which literally meant the burning chamber. The name referred to the chamber's decor of black curtains and burning lamps, I guess, but it was also like fitting to the burning court because like once they found someone guilty, like that's what they're basically like a task force for this witchcraft problem. And if the burning chamber gets you, you're going to be burned alive. That's what's happening here. Yep. And Louis gave the Chambre Ardente extraordinary authority to pursue poisoners, sorcerers, and their patrons without regard to rank. So he's like, I don't give a fuck how high up in court they are, get them. Damn. And I think he wanted, especially the people who were in the court, because they're closer to Louis, like he's scared that someone's going to target him. Mm-hmm. So La Reynie headed this commission, or this tribunal, and over the next 3 years, it held 210 sessions, accumulating evidence and confessions.
A message from McAfee. Wondering why the post office is texting you, or why you owe thousands of dollars in toll fees? Because someone's trying to scam you. The good news? McAfee can help. With McAfee's award-winning scam detection, it's easy to tell what's real and what's fake over text, in your inbox, and online. If they're
You want a free gift.
Seriously? If they're faking it, they're not making it past us. Get award-winning scam detection today. McAfee.com/keepitreal.
As the investigation widened in 1679, one name soon emerged as the most notorious figure in the poison trade, Catherine de Montespan, who is better known as La Voison. I'm doing my best here, guys. La Voison was a Parisian widow in her 40s who had built a thriving business as a fortune teller, sorceress, and poison seller. By all accounts, she was hugely popular. Witnesses claimed, quote, every morning, long before she got up, clients would be waiting for her, end quote, outside her door. So like she rolls out of bed and she's like, all right, come on in, guys, come on in, and is just rolling in dough. Mid-40s, love this for her. Love this for her. She's a businesswoman, and I like that. For the Parisian public, La Voison became the personification of the affair of the poisons. A middle-aged woman in elegant gowns, a society fortune teller, and pretty much a female mobster of the time. She is seen as like a leader. She's seen as glamorous. She's seen as evil. She's seen as scary, powerful. And that's something that a lot of women did not have at that time. Like they didn't have their own money. They couldn't get by on their own. They had to have a husband. They didn't have power. And La Voison had it all. But she, kind of like had to sell her soul to the devil to get that. I don't know if they literally believed that part of it, but you know what I mean. La Voison's arrest came on March 12th, 1679, as she left mass at her parish church. They're arresting her outside of church because despite her occult activities, La Voison was known to be a devout Catholic who often attended services. Like she was going to mass all the time. She's like, I love God.
She's a church lady, yeah.
Yeah. Now, she reportedly considered her magical gifts to be a gift from God, and she saw no conflicts between going to mass and selling poisons. She's like, these go together. These go together. And once in custody, Catherine Montespan's secrets began to spill out. Her profession, she admitted, was that of a fortune teller, part healer, part dispenser of spells and remedies. And she sold charms, she sold love potions, she sold herbal medicines, but those were just the innocent offerings. And for a higher price, La Voison catered to darker desires. And her network dealt in inheritance powders and poisons, in aphrodisiacs, and even in clandestine abortions for women who found themselves inconveniently pregnant. And she was performing back alley abortions.
Yikes.
Now, evidence gathered by La Reynie's team painted a ghastly portrait of La Voison's enterprise. When police raided her home and the premises of other accused sorcerers, they uncovered sinister materials, bottles of arsenic and mercuric chloride, distillation equipment and cauldrons, and a menagerie of gruesome ingredients used in black magic rites. Deadly nightshade, human fat taken from corpses, fingernail clippings, bones, blood, animal parts, and even semen.
Gross.
She's just got these on stock. Like, they're just on hand, like in her little witchy room. Like, you know, your mom's craft room that she never uses? Like, all of our moms have those, right? She's got her craft room. This is like her craft room. She's just got bottles of human fat taken from corpses. Ugh. Now, one inventory item was like reported as, quote, blobs of hanged man's fat.
Is this the Sanderson sisters?
Dude, that's literally what it sounds like. And that just kind of hints at how morbid all of this craft room is. And some reports claim that investigators also discovered small dug-up graves of aborted fetuses in La Voison's garden. Even darker claims allege that the bodies of sacrificed newborns, like babies that were sacrificed to the devil, presumably, they said that they found these dead newborn bodies murdered in her garden.
That's creepy.
And that she sacrificed them during satanic rituals. So you could see how like this became shocking and terrifying to the public. Like if you truly believe that all of this is real, that this magic, the witchcraft, the Satanism, demons, all of that, if you believe that all of that is real and you hear that this is what's happening, you're fucking terrified. You're like, this is spreading, you know, evil is spreading, you know, demons are spreading, that kind of thing. But here's the thing, it's like, we don't know how much of this is true, like about what they found. Obviously, whether or not you believe in this stuff is up to you. But like, even though they're saying they found like aborted fetuses, I feel like the aborted fetuses is probably real.
Yeah.
I don't know that I believe she was sacrificing newborns, but it's possible. It's possible she was.
You never know.
But there's not like, you know, with historical records, you don't know what's really like official and what's not. Or I guess you'd have to dive way deeper than I did. But to be clear, yeah, I guess with that being said, just to be clear, it's likely that some of these more disturbing claims were born out of rumor and not the actual investigation. So like, yes, there's historical reports of these things, but they weren't like official reports. Like this is just what people were saying happened. So again, we don't really know, but we know that at the time, this is what people were hearing, this is what they were talking about, and this is what a lot of people were believing. And according to later reports, there was even a hidden furnace in her house, quote, where the bones were burned if the infant body seemed too large to lay away in a garden grave, end quote. And these stomach-turning revelations fed the public's growing hysteria. One sensational claim held that 2,500 infants' remains were found on her property. A number modern historians say is probably very, very unlikely and untrue. But that's what people were hearing, is that this lady would kill 2,500 babies. Now, nonetheless, La Voison was widely believed to be responsible for at least 1,000 deaths through poison or through ritual sacrifice. Under the intense pressure of interrogation and likely torture, La Voison began confessing and she started naming names. She proved to be the spider of a much larger web that she had weaved throughout Paris. Dozens of other witches and poison dealers were incriminated by her testimony. Some were her direct colleagues and others were competitors or independent operators in the criminal occult market. Among those she named were priests, astrologers, noblemen, and midwives who quietly provided poisons alongside their healing herbs. Shockingly, she also pointed the finger upwards, identifying highborn clients who had purchased her services. According to later accounts, La Voison's confession, which was extracted under extreme torture, implicated a diverse array of Parisian society, from minor nobles and bourgeoisie widows all the way up to Louis XIV's own inner circle. Oof. So this is where it starts to get, we're going to get to the part where Louis wants to cover this up, okay? So even Philippe, Duc d'Orléans, it's spelled like Orleans. Like this is where the word Orleans comes from. But he was the Duke of Orleans, basically Duc d'Orléans, the king's only brother. So this is Louis's own brother, was rumored to have sought potions from fortune tellers, though nothing was ever proved in his case and he never got any ramifications of any of this, of course. But in total, 194 people were arrested during this time by the Chambre Ardente, and they sat in judgment hearing evidence of murder, witchcraft, and heresy. Many of the accused were subjected to torture to extract confessions. Like these 194 people, most of them were tortured brutally, and these torture methods varied widely. They had a wide array. They were like, you know what? We don't pick favorites. We're going to, switch it up every here and there. So classically, water torture was widely used, and like was it Brinvilliers that was water tortured, I think. Victims were forced to swallow huge quantities of water or be repeatedly immersed in water with the aim of breaking resistance and extracting confessions. They had to drink water till they gagged, vomited, and felt their organs painfully distend, sometimes dozens of pints of water. Or others were held underwater or doused repeatedly to induce panic and near drowning. It caused intense nausea, internal pain, risk of water intoxication, and could leave lasting physical and psychological damage. Well, of course, psychological damage, I think any torture can do. Yeah. But historically, it was used in high-profile cases. Brinvilliers, for example, and a lot of these other people. Now, water torture sounds fucking horrible. Not as horrible as the strappado. The strappado is where the victim's hands are tied behind their back, and then they are hoisted into the air by a rope attached to their wrists, forcing the shoulders to twist painfully.
Oh my God.
Interrogators often dropped the victim suddenly and then stopped it midair, violently wrenching or dislocating their arms.
Jesus.
And you can look
Ouch.
up a picture, their arms are just behind their back like this, tied to their wrists. You're hanging by your wrists with your arms tied behind your back. It's crazy. They're hoisting you, dropping you, and then stopping the rope suddenly just to fucking rip your arms out of their sockets. And sometimes weights were added to the feet to intensify the agony.
Oh my God.
And what's crazy about this is this didn't leave any external wounds. There's no cuts, there's no bruises. It just caused excruciating
just fucked up
pain.
Your shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, it rips your arms out of your sockets. You'll never be the same after that. Now, while the strappado is worse than the water torture, in my opinion, I think the worst of all is the boot. The boot. It doesn't sound too ominous. But here's a description according to the website medievallifeandtimes.info, which is obviously the expertise that we're looking for. But I believe that they know what they're talking about, more so than I do. So this is what they wrote. Quote, "There were several types of the foot press. The foot press consisted of a pair of horizontal iron plates which tightened around the foot by means of a crank mechanism in order to lacerate the flesh and crush the bones of the foot. Variations were added, including the addition of hundreds of sharp spikes to the plates. And horrifically, a crank mechanism was connected to a drill so that when the instrument was tightened around the foot, a hole was drilled into the center of the instep in the bottom of the foot. Foot roasting was also a method commonly used. The soles of the feet were smeared with lard and slowly roasted over red-hot coals. A bellows was used to control the intensity of the heat, and a screen could be interposed between the feet and the coals as the victim was questioned. If the questions were not answered satisfactorily, the screen was withdrawn and the naked soles of the feet were again exposed to the flames. Foot roasting was inflicted during the persecution of the Knights Templar. Not for me.
It doesn't sound fun.
They're literally drilling a hole into the bottom of the middle of your foot while simultaneously having spikes sticking into your skin and then slowly crushing your foot with two metal plates that are getting tighter and tighter with a crank mechanism, drilling a hole in your foot and crushing the bones.
Mm-mm. I don't like it.
I don't even understand how back then people survive. How did they survive this stuff? I don't know.
They would have to chop off their foot after that.
Right?
There's no way it would heal.
There's infections and stuff. I don't know. Now, not surprisingly, confessions began to flow freely under these conditions. People are like, I'll tell you whatever the fuck you want to hear. I don't want the boot. And this fact even later troubled La Reynie, since torture-induced testimonies were not always reliable, which shocking. Now, still, the commission obtained enough corroborating evidence, so poison vials, witness statements, correspondence, to convict a lot of these defendants. So apparently it wasn't just the confessions, they had some evidence against a lot of these people, but still. Now, execution by fire was the fate for most of those found guilty of poisoning or sorcery, as these crimes were considered forms of witchcraft and thus punishable by burning. And at least 36 people were executed, though historians don't feel certain that they know the full number, but they know for sure 36 people were executed. Most of these people were burned alive at the stake in front of crowds.
That's crazy.
Yes. Now, others did receive lesser sentences, such as banishment or imprisonment in distant dungeons, especially if they had valuable information or powerful protectors, a powerful family member or something like that. But Yeah, everyone else burning alive. Now, on February 22nd, 1680, La Voison herself was executed in the public square of Place des Grèves in Paris. Definitely didn't say that right. Doing my best. Bound to a stake, she was burned alive for her monstrous crimes. Contemporary reports say that she faced her end intoxicated, having smuggled a flask of intoxicants to dull the pain of the flames. I don't blame her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be like, you know what? Get me drunk. And the executioner, as the story goes, at least the executioner had to wrench the bottle from her hands before the fire was lit, and screams rang from the Queen of Poisons. And with that, you're like, all right, we got the ringleader, we got like 30-something people, but still, the affair of Poisons was not over yet. Not by far. In truth, La Voison's death only deepened the mystery, because among the names that she allegedly revealed was one name that made the scandal an affair of the state. And that was Madame de Montespan, the chief mistress, or bottom bitch, as one may say, of King Louis XIV.
Oh.
So, François Athénée de Rochefort, Marquise de Montespan, that's her full name.
Damn.
Known simply as Madame de Montespan, was one of the most prominent women in France at the time. Like I said earlier, like Louis got he's got a horde of women, and there's a hierarchy. He's got like his number one girl, he's got a number two, and then he's got, some like, I need to switch it up every once in a while type of girls. And these are prestigious positions. To be the king's mistress was a position of power for a woman at the time, at least in Louis' court. I'm sure that's not true in every court throughout the world, but in Louis it was. Now, Madame de Montespan was renowned for her beauty, for her wit, her ambition, and she actually had 7 children born to the king between 1669 and 1678. And out of all of Louis's mistresses, she had more kids of his than any other mistress. Like, damn, 7 kids?
That's a lot.
And I'm like, how many kids did Louis have in total? If he had 7 with just one of his mistresses.
Lot, probably.
It's interesting. Like, think about all of the people now that are descendants of King Louis the 14th through these mistresses that are probably just scattered all over the world. Like, it's crazy. There's got to be hundreds of them by now. Yeah. Now, she was the pinnacle of wealth and influence. And like, this position that she held was one that for other women, it was one of those things that they could dream about, because if lucky enough, if you were beautiful enough, smart enough, ambitious enough, you could become the king's mistress. Where a lot of the monarchy relied on it being passed down through families. Women could never really have political power unless it was based on their husbands or being the king's mistress. So the idea of being the mistress was something that girls dreamed about, type of thing. I mean, obviously not true for all, but it was one of the only ways that a woman could have a lot of power in the court. It was seen as, how a girl might want to be a princess or whatever. Like, if you can't be queen, next best thing is be the chief bitch, Yeah. Now, and guys, if anyone comes at me about saying bottom bitch or chief bitch, I'm gonna block you. I literally don't care. Don't be like, you're being disrespectful to women. No, I'm not. I'm being funny. But so Madame de Montespan, she's at the pinnacle of wealth and influence. She's enjoying the king's love, and she is showered with titles and jewels and gifts. And it seemed unthinkable that such a powerful woman would stoop to dealing with a sorceress like La Voison. Yet that is exactly what multiple different witnesses alleged. And the accusations against Montespan were scandalous, and they were varied. La Voison is not good.
Black
they don't
mass
like it.
Sounds pretty bad.
It's witchcraft. And the ritual was conducted by a priest named Abbé Etienne Guibourg. And in a secret ceremony, Guibourg allegedly conjured Satan to aid Montespan, using Montespan's naked body as the altar for the mass. And in the court of these rituals, an infant was allegedly sacrificed, the baby's throat slit, and its blood collected in a chalice as an offering to the demons. Montespan prayed over the infant's corpse, pleading with the devil to ensure the king's continued love and fidelity.
Damn.
Optimism isn't sunshine and rainbows. It's fixing things, changing the way we fix things. It's running the world on smarter energy. Because if optimism never stops, then change can't either. GE Vernova, the energy of change.
I should add, like, historians think that this is all made up. Like, historians think that, like, none of this ever happened. Like, they weren't killing babies and whatever. Yeah, like, maybe she got a love potion. She was connected to La Voison. That seems to be accepted by historians. But a lot of this story, it seems like they think was blown out of proportion by rumor and like just the rumor mill and people's fear. And by the fact that they're torturing people to get confessions. So then they're like, yeah, and did you kill any babies? No. We know you killed babies. Let's give her the boot. It's like, okay, yes, I guess I killed a baby. Yeah,
like they'll just confess out of fear.
Yeah. And I'm not saying, I guess maybe it's just I don't want to believe that this is true. But these unsettling stories were whispered in dark corners for years. And during the affair of the Poisons, they came out into the open. So now they're being openly discussed. They're not just seen as rumors anymore. They are now becoming seen as fact. And under questioning, Voison confessed, probably while under torture, to arranging these black masses for Montespan. So this comes from part of her confession. And she claimed that she also provided aphrodisiac potions to Montespan, who then used them, like mixed them into the king's food to get him to whatever. And even though like these weren't meant to hurt the king, like doing something like this to the king was like fucking like, no.
Yeah.
You can't alter anything about the king's will or whatever because his will is divine. It's from God, and now you're messing with God. Now, one recipe for these love potions was especially interesting. It allegedly included Spanish fly, powdered iron fillings, and menstrual blood, or the blood of sacrificed infants. It's like blood of sacrificed infants going to give you the best result, but if you don't have this ingredient, you can just replace it with some menstrual blood instead. And this was all whisked together in a concoction, and then it would be mixed in with wine or chocolate and dosed to people.
Ew.
So apparently they're dosing people with
menstrual
the blood
blood
of sacrificed infants or menstrual blood.
Gross.
Which is disgusting. Now, Montespan's motive was obvious. She wanted to keep the king's favor at all costs. Once the king was done with you, because he would go through these number one ladies, and then he's like, after so long, I'm sick of you. I want a new number one. And most of the time he would like give them a pretty good life, like give them some land, give them a nice title, take care of the kids, whatever. But like it wasn't as good as being the number one girl. Like this was something that they would be trying to avoid happening to them. Now, one historian said, quote, "The greater Montespan's hold over the king, the greater her personal and familial benefits," end quote. And she had those 7 kids to take care of. So she wanted the king's favor as long as she could. And she enjoyed immense privileges. Several of her children by Louis had actually been legitimized and were officially part of the nobility, which normally you can't, bastards are not considered nobles ever. So this was like Louis made exceptions for these kids because he really likes Montespan. But Montespan wasn't just sacrificing babies for Louis's love. Montespan's enemies, and there were many enemies that were jealous of her position at court, they whispered that she not only procured love potions, but had also resorted to poisoning her rivals. She was suspected of engineering the downfall of a young, beautiful woman named Madame de Fontanges, who, for a brief time, around 1679, became Louis's latest infatuation. And she was worried that this Fontanges was going to take her spot. She was much younger than Montespan, considered more beautiful. And in 1680, however, she mysteriously fell very, very ill and slowly and painfully died at the age of 20.
Oh, shit.
And so they allege that Montespan poisoned her out of jealousy and killed her, which could be true. I don't know, who knows? Could be true.
Probably.
I think people, these people were poisoning. Like, though all of this satanic rituals and stuff and like sacrificing babies, that's where it's like, I don't know how true that is because like, where are they getting all these babies to sacrifice? But like, they were poisoning people. That is true. Whether or not this was Montespan or whether maybe this girl was just ill, we'll never know, but I think it's possible. Now, even more audacious, Montespan was accused of conspiring to poison the king himself when she feared that his infatuation with her was waning. In one version of the story, around 1679, Montespan had a plan to slip poison into Louis's meal if he cast her aside. And luckily, this plan never came to fruition, but these charges, regicide and sacrilege, were the most explosive of all. If proven, they would amount to treason and heresy by the king's mistress, which was like the most scandalous fucking shit you could ever hear. When La Reynie's team learned of these accusations in 1680, they went full-blown crisis mode. King Louis XIV was horrified at the thought that his intimate companion could be involved in such depravity. At the same time, he realized that if this became public, it would be an unprecedented scandal that could tarnish the monarchy. So Louis was basically just like, this is going to make me look really fucking bad. This is going to make me look stupid. Like, she pulled one over on me.
Yeah, she was my head bitch, and now she's like, doing some shady shit.
My head bitch can't betray me, you know? Like, God's got my back. So that's where he's like, you know what? We got to keep hush-hush about this, because we don't want to make me, the Sun King, the giver of all life and light, to look weak, because that's bad for the monarchy. So Louis privately reviewed the evidence concerning Montespan in mid-1680 and again in 1681. And during that period, the normally relentless Chambre Ardente stalled the proceedings until the king grappled with what to do. And in some closed meetings, Louis and his ministers debated Montespan's fate for a few months. Because remember, everyone's being burned at the stake for this. They want to burn her at the stake. Now, the justice system, and its reputation kind of hung in the balance too. It's like, well, if this gets out and everyone knows about it and we don't burn her, then everyone's going to be like, oh, is the court tainted? Is, Louis tainted by this evil? That kind of thing. Now, in the end, Louis chose self-preservation over what was considered justice at the time. And in late 1681, after all of these deliberations, he ordered that all testimony implicating Madame de Montespan be sealed and suppressed, very much like the Epstein files. Release those files. Now, the Chambre Ardente was allowed to continue its work generally, but it was not permitted to pursue Montespan or make her name public. And no formal charges were ever brought against her. And she never faced trial or anything. She got nothing.
That's crazy.
And the other thing is, people debate, why did Louis do this? It's okay, well, to protect his image is an obvious one. But there's also, the impression I got reading about this was, Louis didn't believe this. He did not believe that she was trying to kill him or she was sacrificing babies or whatever. Yeah, maybe she was going to fortune tellers or getting love potions, but he did not believe that she was genuinely evil. He didn't believe that she was trying to kill him, none of this. And that's why he didn't really act on it. Again, that's just the impression I got reading about it. But remember, she's the mother of 7 of his children. And who's going to take care of those kids if they burn her at the stake? Right. Not him, I'll tell you that much. So as a result, a lot of powerful culprits, not just Montespan, but other people in the court, they escaped execution. And a lot of less powerful people had already gone at the stake. But those aristocrats whose names came up, including Montespan and a handful of other courtiers, were mostly quietly exiled or imprisoned without any public trial. For example, another implicated noblewoman, Olympe Mancini, Comtesse de Soissons. But anyway, Olympe de Soissons fled to Belgium and avoided examination. So people are running, they know that they're going to come to them. They're scared. Others, like the Duc de Luxembourg, did some time in the Bastille, but they were eventually released. And the king was just determined to punish them, get them out of court, make sure they're not a danger to him, but also he didn't want a spectacle that made him look weak. How did you let all of these people invade your court?
Right.
Madame de Montespan herself maintained her innocence for the rest of her life. And in truth, the evidence against her has never really moved beyond the hearsay of, these people who were getting tortured. You know what I mean? So Louis did remove Montespan from his roster as all of this unfolded. And by 1680, their passionate affair had cooled. But remarkably, he didn't really banish her from court immediately, not immediately at least. She lived at Versailles for another decade. And that's what makes me think he didn't believe any of this stuff about her.
Yeah.
Because even if he was just trying to cover it up to protect his image, if he believed that she was sacrificing babies and trying to kill him, he would have banished her from the court at the very least. So she lives there for another decade. And then in 1691, a long time after the scandal kind of died down, she retired to a convent for the rest of her days. Now, Louis did see to it that Montespan's name was kept out of the official record, which apparently didn't do much because here we are talking about it. And when the transcripts of interrogations were published, she was just referred to as, quote, a certain great lady, end quote. A certain great lady this, a certain great lady that. And I'm like, I like that. Oh, save all my friends, if anyone's listening to this, save my number in your phone as a certain great lady. But yeah, with that, the affair was over. She's removed from the roster and there is a royal cover-up. And the Sun King was shading the truth.
Ooh.
Thanks. Now, we're going to wrap it all up here because by 1682, the affair of the poisons was dying down. The chambre ardente had burned bright for a few years, but it had also caused a lot of fear and suspicion in just the general public. Like, the fact that they were just hunting people down and burning them alive, spoiler, the public didn't really like that. Like, they were like, yeah, we wanted you to stop this witchcraft, but like, also, are you sure all these people that you're burning alive, you didn't like torture fake confessions out of them? But who knows? Now, even the commissioners grew wary and skeptical because there were so many accusations pouring in, and they began to realize that tortured confessions often led to wild exaggerations and false claims. And after the Montespan debacle, the king's enthusiasm for this purge of witchcraft, it started to die down too. So he wasn't all about it like he was in the beginning. Now, La Reynie, for all that he was this sanitation queen, began to doubt the value of continuing when so many accusations had touched the highest circles, but could never be expressed openly to the public. And so in July 1682, Louis XIV officially disbanded the Chambre Ardente, effectively pardoning or forgetting the remaining of the accused. He's like, you know what? Just let him go. Whatever. We're all good. Let's close this chapter. And with that, he burned all of the secret records of the investigation.
Oh, shit.
Epstein files, dude.
Get him out of here.
Yeah. He's like, I was never on the island, you know? Mm-hmm. Okay. In the end, at least 36 people were executed. Dozens more were given life imprisonment, sent to remote fortresses to rot in silence, and a few others died by suicide under torture or were poisoned by their own family to prevent them from testifying because they were bringing like shame to the families. Mm-hmm. In sheer numbers, the affair of the poisons definitely took more lives than the Salem witch trials, which are the witch trials that we often hear about. And like the Salem witch trials are a little bit different because it didn't involve like poison and actual murders like this. As far as I know, I don't know that much about it. But these were still witch trials. Like these people were being burned alive because they were practicing witchcraft, not because they killed people, you get hanging or you get your head chopped off. But if you kill people with witchcraft, you're getting burned alive. And this whole scandal, the affair of the poisons, took like, it depends on what you read, but I read 2 to 3 as many lives as the Salem's 20 executions. Because they said at least 36 people had been executed, they know for sure. But like there are some stories that like up to 80 people were executed for this. So they were killing a lot of people. Now, the aftershocks of this whole incident were significant. King Louis XIV, now in his mid-40s, emerged from the episode a changed man. The near miss of having his bottom bitch accused of satanic crimes seemed to awaken Louis's religious conscience and his fear of God's judgment in the early 1680s. And because Louis was also very scared that all of the affairs and all of the shit that he was doing, that like God was going to look down. It's like, yeah. Isn't that the whole thing? Isn't that God's whole thing? Is like, these are the rules that you're not supposed to break. And he's like, you know what? Now I'm starting to see what everyone's been talking about when I do my daily mass. He's like, they've been telling me every day my whole life. And it's like, oh. But anyway, so he starts to be a God-fearing man. And in the early 1680s, Louis dramatically toned down the hedonism of his court, the libertine nature of the court. He's like, you know what? We're going to have less orgies here.
Take it down a couple notches.
Like, cut it down to once a week, guys. Cut it down to once a week. So he got rid of his parade of mistresses. And in fact, shortly after closing the Chambre Ardente, the king married a devout Christian widow in secret. And this was a woman named Madame de Montespan. And she was actually the governess of his children with one of his other mistresses. And I can't remember, I think it might have been Montespan's children. But it was one of his bottom bitches' kids' babysitters was Madame de Montespan. And he fell in love with her, probably because he was in his mid-40s and she was like 20. I don't know exactly how old, but I know she was definitely young. And he married her in a secret ceremony in 1683. And the court was not happy about this. The political figures in the court were not happy about this. This was not a good match for the king. Like, this woman had no reason to be marrying a king in their eyes. And Under her influence, though, she seemed to be a good influence because she was very devout, and the court took on a more moralistic atmosphere as opposed to all the gambling and sex and affairs and magic and all that. And starting to sound like this court's getting boring.
No scandals? Come on, guys.
Yeah, where's the
drum?
Where's the drum? Like, what? Why? I don't want a show about this. I want a show about the magic and the affairs and all that. Which, by the way, this whole story, I'm like, this should be a limited series. Like, I want 10 episodes on this.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be good? Like, there's so many different, like, affairs and cheating and love stories and whatever and murders. Like, this would be such a good limited series. I'm going to write it. I'm going to write a historical fiction book about this, and then Netflix can make it into a limited series, okay?
There you go.
Now, for the broader French society, the affair of the poisons left a legacy of anxiety and of caution. The notion of secret poisoners lurking among the genteel classes lingered in the public's imagination. The government enacted stricter controls on the sale of arsenic and other poisons because, like, some of these things were ingredients that were, like, used in medicine, I think, or used for something, so they were being sold. But for a while, I think they were just selling them to whoever. And now they're starting to regulate these things. They also cracked down on fortune tellers and sorceresses in Paris, at least for a little bit. And on the same like at the same time, in another sense, the scandal kind of served as this cautionary tale about the dangers of mass hysteria, because I think people started to realize that, like, oh, this is starting to get unbelievably huge. They're killing a lot of people. There's not evidence to back this up. Yeah, there's confessions implicating them, but these confessions came out of torture, and then we're burning these people alive. And so pretty early, like soon after, people started to realize that, oh, this was out of fear. This was fear-born and not fact-born. And it started to be, like, even La Reynie himself, in retrospect, he said that it spun out of control, and it was fueled by, quote, overactive and paranoid imaginations, end quote, as much as by real evidence. So yeah, while some of it was real, like, the consensus was a lot of it wasn't. And I think that's true here. Like, all of the sacrificing babies, I'm like, where are they getting these babies?
Yeah.
Where are they getting them?
Where are they finding them?
Now, many innocent or marginally involved people probably got swept up in this frenzy. And I'm sure some of those people who got fucking burned alive probably didn't kill anyone or hurt anyone. Maybe they practiced, they were giving out love potions or whatever. But I'm sure that there were some innocent people in there.
Yeah.
Now, in the end, Louis reigned for another 30 years. And France tried to forget this nightmare at the heart of the Sun King's legacy. But the story was too sensational to vanish entirely. So pamphlets and memoirs secretly circulated in later years, ensuring that these details survived. So that's where, like, historians think, like, a lot of this, it didn't come from, like, official records. It came from, the townspeople writing these stories and writing, their claims that they're making. And the image of the glamorous Madame de Montespan performing a black mass naked on an altar with a sacrificed baby drinking its blood, whether it was truth or whether it was fabrication, that became a legend that has persisted for over 3 centuries, which I like it. It's a good story. Do I think it's real? No, I don't think she did that. But I like the story. And guys, if something happens to me, I would like you to tell this story about me. About that. What did they call her? The something lady? A certain noble lady or something? I don't remember what it was. But no, I'm just kidding. Don't tell people to sacrifice babies, please. I didn't. I haven't sacrificed any babies. But the affair of the poisons remains one of the most shocking criminal episodes in European history. It has the sex, it has the murder, it has black magic, and it's got weight. Like the witchcraft, the Satanism, the sacrificing babies, and this royal cover-up. It's got everything. And really, it reveals the underbelly of an era that is often remembered for its elegance, its grandeur, its like jewels, gambling, its opulence. And beneath it all, at Versailles, there is a trail of poison that tells a very different story. One of desperation, one of delusion, and one of the eternal, undying human fascination with the forbidden and the supernatural. That's crazy. That is the affair of the poisons.
That's so crazy.
That was a fucking hard story to tell because
it's
doozy. 10 stories in one, and I'm sure there are 15 other stories. There's 36 people that were executed.
Yeah.
I couldn't do them all. I focus on the most popular ones. Yeah, but yeah, it was fun to do this research after going to Versailles and everything.
Yeah.
I kind of wish I did it before so like I could look for specific things. But yeah, we'll post some videos. If you guys follow us at A Trial by Podcast on Instagram is where we're most active. But everything we post to Instagram goes to Facebook too. If you're more of a Facebook person, check us out there. Check out the videos I already posted of the catacombs if you're interested in seeing those. And then we'll post some stuff about this as well.
Hell yeah.
And then make sure, remember, Thursday we're releasing that bonus episode with Julia Cowley from The Consults. And I'm so excited about it. Please listen and please tell me how much you love it through DMs and comments. Please. Okay. You want to end us off?
Ta-ta.
Ta-ta.